Hello and welcome back aboard narrowboat Gentian, currently moored at Cropredy Marina, but no longer after today. My mooring agreement has run out. It is time to move it. I was hoping at some point in July to actually continue south down the South Oxford Canal, all the way perhaps to Oxford and back, but I'd have needed to do it in a fair hurry, about 6 days there and back, and for one reason or another, circumstances have just conspired that there's always been something, whether it's weather or something else in my diary, or just some event has meant I haven't had a continuous 6 days when it has been right to do that trip. And with the time now having run out for my mooring here, I need to go back up north. So I'm going to head back up towards the Wigrams Junction area today and tomorrow. I've got 2 days. Today is Tuesday, tomorrow Wednesday. The forecast, the weather, glorious. In fact, it's already baking hot. It's lovely. It's lovely. Mustn't grumble, but it is actually very hot indeed. So I'm going to burn. I've put some sunscreen on, I think, but I shall put my hat on in a moment as well. Anyway, I've done all my checks. I've filled up the water tank. I've emptied the toilet tank. So it's time to head off. Quite often, when you attempt any manoeuvre in a marina, the wind knows what you're doing and blows against you to muck things up and make you look silly. Fortunately, in this case, the wind was largely asleep and I was able to back off the pontoon without any awkward drama. For the final time, for now at least, I turned away from what had been a very pleasant stay at Cropredy Marina. It's a nice place, I liked it here, and I headed towards the exit, bidding the very hungry local duck fleet goodbye as I went. And goodbye to fellow moorers too, all of whom had been very pleasant. Through the narrow exit, past the little swing bridge that enables moorers to cross from side to side, there's a long pole on the offside which they use to then hook the bridge across when needed. With no other boats around, my exit was clear. Since I was leaving, I bid them Swan Voyage. The first of many locks, which you'll have seen if you watch my videos of the trip down, was only a short distance along here, but progress was immediately halted. I think I've gone about 200 yards down the canal, just about to get to the first lock, and first hiccup of the day, the Canal and River Trust have shut the lock for an hour while they refill the pound above because of low water levels, so I've just got to pull in and make a cup of tea. There was already another boat waiting below the lock. In fact, they'd alerted me to the issue as I approached. Since this was going to take a while, I went up to have a look, and indeed water was being allowed to flow freely down through all the locks from here to the top pound, so as to refill the lower pound below Cropredy. All the paddles were up, normally exactly what shouldn't happen at a lock. Just had a word with the very pleasant young lady operating this lock, and they've got lockies on this lock, the next one up, the one after that, the whole flight after that, and the lock below this as well, all to let this water through because of low water levels further down, and they say it's going to be about an hour, so yes, definitely time for another cup of tea. In fact, I never got as far as putting the kettle on because I got chatting to these very friendly boaters about their renovation plans. You can't be a proper boater unless you've got several DIY projects on the go, you know. We weren't the only ones waiting patiently, as so was their lovely dog. An hour later, as predicted, the lock was reopened and waiting boats could start to go through. This journey was, like the trip down, 2 long sets of locks bookending a long stretch of cruising. So get ready to see lots of speeded up lock action. There we go, dead ahead, Varney's Lock. I was doing tick over, worry not. After a brief wait for the other boat I was following to finish, I got my turn. And in a flash I was through, thanks in part to assistance from the boater following me, who came up and helped with the gate and paddles. "Arr, there be a shipwreck, me hearties! And there be the scurvy pirates who sank it!" Elkington's lock was next, with that same lovely gentleman again giving me assistance.
By Jiminy, you do feel the warmth when you're operating the locks. I've done those semi-solo. The boat coming up behind me has always caught me up just at the point where he's able to shut the gates behind me and close a paddle, which is immensely helpful. It does put extra work on him though. I said, "Are you sure that's okay?" And he was, yep, I'll do it, don't worry. So that's nice. It does help, but I'm really feeling the heat now.
Isn't this beautiful as I go past Clattercoat Wharf?
With the 3 individual locks done, I next come to the Claydon flight of 5. Now, when I came down this, there were lock keepers on, which helped enormously, flew through the flight. And there certainly were lockies there earlier because they were letting the water down. But whether they've now done that and gone away, I don't know. If there are lockies on, again, it should be easy passage through the locks. Otherwise, it's 5 in very quick succession. But then after that, there's a long, I think it's 11 miles, possibly more actually, without anything. It's the summit pound of just flat cruising.
I see trees of green, red roses no. I see them bloom right in my face. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Thwack! If you saw the video when I was coming down this way, this bit was in the middle of being piled. Now look at it, all sparkly and finished with a new gravel towpath. Over on the offside, work is underway to stabilise the bank. Remember I said there would be lots of locks on both ends of this journey? Well, here's the first lock of the Claydon flight, and my friends from earlier waiting again to take their turn. As soon as they'd gone in, I pulled my boat forward on the lock landing, then went up to help shut the gates and so on. Calmer and paying things forward is very much the ethos on the canals. I got help by someone earlier, so I'd offer help now. And it gets things moving quicker for me too, of course. This is the lock that had been badly damaged by a boater hitting the gates at full throttle a week or so earlier, and the temporary fix was evident in the amount of water leaking through, even though the gates were shut. It was so turbulent I'd have sworn a paddle was left open, but no, it's just leaking badly. Another boat had been waiting to come down, so they of course did that as the lock emptied, ready for me to go in. If there's boats going both ways, it obviously makes sense for one to go up, then one to go down, in turn, and so on. And the lady on the boat was grateful for the help.
Thank you.
In fact, there was a fair bit of traffic coming the other way, which meant when I came out of that lock, one was also coming out of the next, and we could both swap places without the hassle of shutting the gates behind us. There is nothing more satisfying as a solo boater than not having to stop and go back to close the gates, which you are otherwise supposed to do. A pause below Lock 3 gave me a chance to gaze at the view. Yet another boat was coming down.
Great timing, thank you.
I'll not show you going through every lock as it's all much of a muchness, but here's the 4th and 5th in ultra quick time. And finally I was in the queue for the top lock, which, it turned out, only had one paddle working at both top and bottom, which meant it took ages to fill and empty. Now was clearly the time for a cheese sandwich. And I didn't know they were in the area, but the next boat down was my friends Steve and Andy. I've linked to their YouTube channel in the description below. Plus, not at all staged for the camera, I got a wave.
I set out this morning at 9:30. It is now 2 o'clock, so that took a lot longer than it ought to have for reasons of slow water and locks with paddles not working and all sorts of things, but I have now finally cleared all the locks, the Claydon lock flight and everything, and now it's 11 or so miles, I think it's 11 miles, straight cruising until I get to Marston Dolls, where I shall hopefully stop for the night. Please let there be a space at Marston Dolls for me to stop. I don't want to have to go through the Napton flight as well today. Anyway, let's put the foot down, pedal to the metal and all that, and crack on.
This pair seemed to have mislaid their parents and weren't old enough yet to work out that you won't outrun a narrowboat. Don't worry, they ended up swept aside as they always do, yet still kept swimming alongside and hunting for their mummy and daddy. Suddenly, confusion as a higher boat ahead had to slow so as not to hit another boat which was slewed across the canal. And no, it hadn't been moored, it was going along, so how that happened I've no idea. But the sloon boat moved off, unfortunately leaving the higher boat stuck in the silt where it had grounded in trying to avoid a collision. As I came alongside, they explained what had happened.
Somebody was
Sideways across the canal, so had to stop for it.
I did ask if they needed any help, but they managed to reverse off as I went by. Pretty soon, I'd caught up the troubled boat and found it was the folk I'd been going up all the locks with. But whilst I'm absolutely no speed demon on the canals, my engine was going at a fairly lax 1200 RPM, I was catching them up. They kindly beckoned me past, so I floored it in what must have been quite an unexpected clearing of the pipes for my engine, and I went past them as cleanly as I could manage before dropping back to my prior cruising speed of about 2.5 miles an hour. At that point, I re-entered the Fenny Compton Tunnel, which isn't actually a tunnel, but used to be a couple of 100 years ago. Now it's more a narrow channel with a tree canopy. At the end of the tunnel, Fenny Compton Wharf is found. Time to check their reputedly excellent fuel prices again, though I still didn't need to top up. Fenny is always busy with moored craft. There was barely space even for my tiny boat to fit in. Here we have a classic canal dilemma, namely that just as I went past the wider bit with space, I spotted that boat coming round the bend. Now, if you go into full throttle reverse on a narrowboat, you will end up like the boat earlier, sideways across the canal, so it's not advised. So, spotting that there was a little wider section just after these leaves, which I could squeeze into, I nudged forward and tried to keep steady ahead while the other boat came past. There was just space, and it's a credit to the other captain that he expertly steered through. I constantly worry after this kind of thing that I should have done it differently, but if I'd madly hit reverse I would have caused an obstruction and he'd have had to wait while I sorted myself out going backwards. So I think I'll just chalk that down to typical canal bad luck. But you'll be excited to hear I definitely made a cock-up later in this trip, which you'll see in the next video. Despite my firm plan to make it to Marston Dolls by the end of the day, the delays at the locks had already seen me do 7 hours, and, especially in the hot sun, I am something of a lightweight. So about 5 miles short of my target, I'd had enough, quite frankly, and spotted this nice bit of metal piling to tie up against in the middle of nowhere. It was a lovely quiet spot, so I relaxed, rehydrated, and settled back with a book for the evening. In part 2, the journey will continue all the way back up to and through Napton. Thanks for watching. Cheerio.